Feels like a mere 24 months, I'm sure.
Right.
Okay.
See how we go with timing as to whether we drag it on a little bit.
No,
All righty, thanks very much for coming, Mr. Greenfield and Ms. Mallia. Could you each please state your full name and title and either swear an oath or an affirmation, starting with you, Mr. Greenfield?
Thanks, mate. Darren Greenfield, the State Secretary of the CFMEU Construction and General Division, New South Wales Branch. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mallia?
Thanks. Yes, so Rita Mallia, I'm the State President of the CFMEU Construction and General Division in New South Wales, and I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Would either or both of you like to make a short opening statement?
Yeah, thanks. I'll make an opening statement. In regards to the two buildings out at Parramatta, the CFMEU obviously placed a green ban on that site, on those two buildings being demolished earlier in the year. We didn't do that lightly. When we placed a green ban, we thoroughly look into who we're being asked to support and what we're being asked to support. We did get approached probably, I think, about 8 months earlier, and we had internal discussions in our union, then were approached again earlier this year, as I said, in I think it was March or April, and with through our committee of management, and from there it gets endorsed, yes or no, and then goes to our whole delegate forum. And what we were taken through at that time, we thought it was definitely a proposal that we should support and our union should support, and that was unanimously endorsed by, as I said, our committee of management, then our delegates, whole delegate structure of 170, 180 delegates. And in regards to it, it was around the buildings, the two buildings that were there, our heritage, and a lot of our members, as the community out there in Western Sydney, think that too many times our heritage gets trodden over and it's just discarded for new structures all around our country. And obviously we're a building union and our members work in construction. So as I said, we don't do these things lightly. Our members would be working on a new museum in Western Sydney. So it's not something that we just do to say, well, our members will agree to do and do themselves out of work. So there's an important issue for them. And our opinion was the community wasn't being listened to out there in regards to these two important buildings. And I've just got to add, we are not in favour of not having a museum, obviously, in Western Sydney. We think the people deserve that. We placed the green ban on this site to say, build a museum, but retain the two buildings that are there, Willow Grove and St George's Terrace. Other people have opinions, obviously, around a better site for it or not, whether it's better there or better elsewhere, whatever, for a museum. Our green ban is around retaining the two buildings that are there. We say that a museum can be built out at Parramatta on that site. There are issues we see around flooding and other issues with that site, but if that has to be 100% a site that has to have a museum, they can retain the two buildings and they can be a part of a museum. And what better thing to have associated with a museum as two lovely buildings like that, a part of our heritage. It's there forever as part of a museum to hold artefacts and things for the community to visit and people that come to this country to visit. So, yeah, I think it's a very important issue, and that's why we've backed it to the limit.
Thank you. Ms. Mallia, are you fine? Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Greenfield, so what do you make of this morning's proposal from a number of businesses out there to move Willow Grove to another site? Does that
We have looked.
your expectations, or what do you think?
We have looked at that, and I had a proposal put to me by KPMG on behalf of the state government, I was told, or the minister. I still haven't had a meeting with the minister. He's cancelled twice on me when we've had meetings locked in. And my opinion of that is it was because there wasn't a firm decision. To me, you have a meeting to try and come to a decision, but that meeting hasn't happened. when we looked at the proposal of moving it, we have concerns, number one, around what they're stating it will cost to move that building, and the amounts of money they're talking. We haven't seen any figures on that. We've asked for feedback from people in our industry, and the figure that's been thrown around of around $5 million, people are saying to us, no. You'd be looking at 2 to 3, possibly 4 times that, moving a heritage building to another site. So we have concerns around that. And we have a lot of concerns around losing the value of them buildings in the position they are and the meaning of it to the community out there. When I was out there doing some media stuff and talking to the community a few months back, one of the nurses came up to me and said, my mum was born in this hospital, she worked in this hospital. And to the community out there, the people I've spoken to, that site means a lot. It means a lot to them, have them buildings there, what they were used for in the past. And we don't see why they can't retain them. As I said, it's been done before, and they build a building around them. We still say that they haven't openly looked.
Can I take you back to that?
Yep.
So do you have experience? Is it possible to build around them?
Yes, it is.
How does that occur?
We've got various heritage buildings around Sydney that they have retained a majority of the building and built buildings around them. They can design a building to include any building. There's a back portion of Willow Grove that is relatively new in the scheme of things. And from what I've looked at, the part of the new proposed museum will cut off the back corner of that building. So there are ways and means of designing it. What we see is that the state government is looking at pushing them buildings down and get rid of them to have a walkway, a civic walkway through where that building sits, Willow Grove. And we say to us it's disgusting to demolish a building of that nature to have a civic walkway. Manage the building, build a building around it, which can be done and has been done in the past, to include it in a museum and keep it there. And it is important to the whole, from all our discussions, it's important to the community. I've got to say on this issue, and I've said it to a lot of people, the feedback and the response we've had to our green ban, I've been involved with this union for probably about 41 years and in our industry, and it's been at least 20, 25 years since I've seen a response from the Australian community to a green ban or any of our issues in the last 20 years. It's been massive.
One last question, David. Do you put many, do you throw green bans around?
No, not very often.
Yeah.
Rarely. And as I said, we do take them very seriously. We did put one on not long ago at the Bondi Pavilion.
You won that one.
And
You won that one.
yeah, we won that, and the community had a lot of support out there.
Yep.
That was a very important issue for them and for us. And prior to that, we had one on the Women's Factory out of Parramatta.
Yep.
And that was successful in keeping it there. But yeah.
So you don't throw them around?
No, not willy-nilly at all. We pride ourselves on what they mean and the meaning of a green ban. And obviously our opinion is if we did throw them out there willy-nilly, they would mean nothing. And that we hold them dearly from where they come from. And as we say, and our members say, you would not have the Rocks, you would not have Centennial Park. Half of Sydney would not be here if you threw them away around it. They wouldn't have the weight. So no, we don't.
I hear you. Thank you.
Just on examples of where it's done, we are sitting in a building that's heritage protected with modern appendages to it. It may not be the most attractive appendage, and maybe they could do a better job at Parramatta. But you've got the Australian Museum down the road. It's just added on a massive wing to the existence. You've got the Art Gallery of New South Wales putting on an absolutely new spandangle new wing. So this is not beyond the realms of possibility to incorporate this building and St George's Terrace in the overall scheme of things.
You can go to Phillip Street, just across the way, and you can see that row of colonial terraces that have the.
I don't know if that's the.
that have buildings right up against them.
I think that's almost what you call facadism there.
I disagree, because it wraps around to the museum. So I think it's quite nice.
Kept a couple there.
Ms Greenfield, can I just be clear? Your green ban, I'll start again. The union's green ban extends to demolishing it and relocating Willow Grove.
Yes, it does.
And you're unambiguous on that?
Yeah, that is. We have placed that to retain the 2 buildings on that site on behalf of the community.
You know a bit about construction.
Yeah.
How would you go about tearing apart a 130-year-old building and then relocating. It's not like pulling apart a Lego set, is it? I mean, you're going to inevitably do a major damage to the fabric, aren't you?
Yeah, and it is a major project to dismantle a heritage building and relocate it, and that's why we have major concerns around the figures that have been thrown around of $5 million, I think it is. As I said, the feedback we've received, that won't happen. And once you start pulling apart brick by brick a heritage building, aside from the damage you'll do to certain components of that building, there's massive costs that can come into play into re-erecting that in another place. So, yeah, and the other week when we were out there, when we did the walk with the inquiry, there was Indigenous community, 2 women from the Indigenous community, and they were telling me the value of them grounds to the Indigenous community out there. So it's not just the 2 properties, it's the grounds, the whole site there, and that's what our green band's placed on.
Yeah. I mean, but if you do just tear apart a heritage building, not only is it a hugely expensive and complex process, but the plaster, the ceiling fabric, so much of the heritage fabric is going to be lost. It's going to be like a Disney replica that they build in North Parramatta, won't it?
Yeah. It'd be very, very similar to what was put to me by Infrastructure New South Wales about putting a video display in the new museum of Willow Grove and St George's Terrace. To me, you won't have the original building. It won't be the original building. It will be a new building. The original building moved, and as you said, all the original parts of them buildings, as we walked through the other day, that do remain. At least we have them there, and it can be upgraded where it is. There is a bit of damage in there, but to move it and pull it down, everything gets redone. So yeah.
Well, a lot about a heritage building is its curtilage and location and context and all those things that go along with it.
Yeah.
Especially also, of course, with St George Terrace as well, which I got to say, it was, when I had a look at it the other day when we were there, looked in very, very bad shape.
Yeah,
and they were actually functioning restaurants and shops and were actually being used.
Yeah.
So it's really, really rather sad. Mr. Greenfield, have you considered what might happen to the Harwood buildings in terms of protection from by the union?
We've had early discussions around the buildings down the road here. We have concerns. We understand that the government's come out and said with the museum in Oldemo, obviously we're based over at Pyrmont, and it was fantastic for the community there to keep the buildings at the museum down at Oldemo. But we have still got concerns we've been discussing internally how long that is for and whether certain buildings down there are still going to be attempted to be sold off or demolished in the near future, in the coming year. So yeah, we are having internal discussions with our committee manager around that, and we've had discussions about going for a walk through down there because some of our committee and management and our delegates haven't been through the museum down there, so they're keen to go and have a look down there. But yeah, we are concerned about where that's going to end up down there.
Thank you.
I just had a question, Mr. Chair. You mentioned, Mr. Greenfield, in your opening statement about one of the factors that led you to taking, in some ways, the significant step of placing a green ban on Willow Grove was the feedback from your members who, in fact, live in Western Sydney and have a kind of lived experience of what is happening to heritage out there and urban communities out there. I just wanted a little bit more feedback from you on that, because I think that's quite an important perspective, that concern was coming up from your delegates, from your members who are part of those communities and what they want to see in their streets and their neighbourhoods.
Yeah, it was a major concern, as I said. That's why it was unanimous from our members. They see it all too often in the job they do in construction of buildings just getting bowled over, and a lot of times it goes unnoticed and nothing gets said about it because they are not that old, but sometimes they are, and they're just bowled over anyway. But in regards to this, we have a lot of members at the moment working in that vicinity on maybe half a dozen projects around there, and they were very concerned about it. And as I said, they say, well, there is not a lot left in Parramatta, so why are we getting rid of something that should be retained there? You know, they say they take their kids to Parramatta, they live in Western Sydney, and as I said, I keep hearing out there in the media about the CFMU's against a museum for Western Sydney. We are not against a museum for Western Sydney. We love Western Sydney. I'm from Western Sydney. I'd love Western Sydney to have a museum and many more buildings out there for the community to use and enjoy. But to bowl these buildings over, it's just unthinkable. We say, and our members say the same thing.
It's also representative of their past. I mean, there is skills in the making and the construction of Willow Grove that you could not even, actually don't know how you could rebuild some of it, because I know that we've got the skills to replicate the kind of work that it took to build that building, and the same with St George's Terrace. So for construction workers, it's actually part of their lived history. They are building the buildings of today, but they can look back and see what their forefathers built in the past. So it's all tied into that industrial history as well as the history of, how long white settlement and et cetera has been in Parramatta.
Do you think that someone may attempt to knock the buildings down despite the green ban?
We have grave concerns that the government will announce a week out from Christmas or 2 days out from Christmas that they're moving ahead and attempt to get someone in there over the Christmas break and demolish the buildings. I mean, we saw what happened with the hotel in Parramatta at 10 to midnight. People came in, demolition company, and bowled the building over. Obviously, so the public weren't aware until the morning when the building was gone. We do have concerns that sometime in a quiet period over Christmas, we have a lot of our members out that way keeping an eye on it. As I said, we have a fair few sites around the project out there, and I'm quietly confident we can get a large number of people there very quick if they do attempt to demolish them, because, as I said, we hold our green ban very dear to our hearts, so we'll be out there if they do.
You mentioned earlier that the government had sought to make times with you to discuss the issue, but do you think that that's still going to happen, or do you think that, is the perception that they've given up?
My perception is that I don't think they want to at the moment. I would like them to. I'd like to have that discussion. But as I've said in many interviews and in letters to the government, I think they're trampling over the people that elected them. Some did, some didn't, but I'm sure a lot did. And they're not sitting down and taking on board what the community out there in Western Sydney are asking for. It's something pretty straightforward to keep part of their heritage in Parramatta. So I just say to them, I hope they do. I hope they do come and sit at the table and have that discussion. As I said, I think to not come to a meeting and postpone it twice because there's not something on the table that's an agreed position prior to the meeting. As I said, I have meetings daily from 6 in the morning to probably 9 at night, and there's rarely a position at the table. You have a meeting to resolve issues, obviously, so I just don't see how they want to resolve the issues when they're not prepared to sit at the table.
Does the union have a position in relation to where a new powerhouse museum in Parramatta should be located? And keep in mind that, in a previous iteration of this committee, we actually did recommend that there should be a museum in Western Sydney. In fact, we even talked about a museum of New South Wales or something, didn't we? So we talked in terms of two.
Yeah.
Do you have a view on that, or does the union have a view?
Well, as I said earlier, our green ban is that it is built there at the site, but retain the two buildings, and that's why we placed our green ban. But we do also, as I said, have the information that everybody has that there are concerns around flooding in that area with the museum and the community attending there. In the last short period, obviously the government's come out and said they're going to redesign parts of the bottom of that building because of the flooding. Well, to me, that tells us that it hasn't been looked into properly, and the whole design of this building needs to be re-looked at. Infrastructure New South Wales said to me, it will put it back a year if we have to go back to the drawing board on the design. Well, I said to them, what is a year if it means retaining them two buildings and going back and looking at the design? So we're happy for it to be built there if it encompasses the two buildings. As I said, others have a view that there may be a site at Fleet Street, but to us, to put a brand new building in Fleet Street as a museum with the heritage buildings that are there at the moment, whether that works, if it's a similar design or depending what they're going to build. So, but our aim and our green ban was for that site to retain the two buildings and have the museum for Western Sydney.
I am done.
Any more questions? No. Okay.
Come on, guys, take a swing, come on.
I'm not like that.
Taylor, what were you saying about the CFMU?
I note that you weren't
Darren's
quite
here.
as pugilistic about
Underprivileged in these
the
proceedings.
architecture experience.
I must admit, I'm having trouble saying CFMEU these days. I know you're not saying it.
No, I just leave the,
We
just
just
leave
You
the one M.
just got the one M. Yeah, I know.
MTU.
Yeah,
I always trip up on the second M.
yeah, a lot of people do.
Nobody ever called the AMWU. What was it? The AFME PKIU?
No,
Nobody
they
ever said.
No,
Yeah, no,
that's
they
right. It changed. Well, thank you very much for coming.
No, thank you.
Thanks very much. I don't think there was anything taken on notice, was there? No. So, yeah, thanks very much.
No, thank you for the
We've got a
invite.
late
I
start.
appreciate coming up.
No, we
and
appreciate your
helping.
contribution.
No, thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Guys.